On the surface, Fi seems like he should be a pretty straightforward deck to build. He's all aggro, so get the ratios of fire starters and blue pitches correct, and we're off to the races. In reality, though, I have found it extremely difficult to get Fi tuned to where I like him. As we've seen lists start to come in from RTNs in this last weekend's culling, it makes sense then to see what the big boys are running and have had success with. But even within those lists, there's a surprising amount of small but significant choice differences. So today I want to review and compare a few of the top lists from these last few weeks, look for commonalities, differences, and even a few things I was surprised to see. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Flesh and Blood folks. Welcome back to Dice Commando, and go again, a fabulous cast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and that's right, we're back. I was on vacation for a week, had a few videos go up, but yeah, I was able to get away. I even unplugged and did no social media for a couple days. It's pretty refreshing. Now, this is a personal preference, I like to write in binders. The tactile feel, really just holding the pencil, just helps me think as I go, and it's kind of a relaxing and focusing activity for me. And while I was on vacation, I did quite a bit of that, and I think I have a full binder full of Fi deck variants with ripped pages all over the damn place, right? And I like to use spiral notebooks, so there's this little piece of paper everywhere, and anyway, you guys get it. So now, sure, probably 95% of each one of those pages that I wrote last week are pretty much the same, but it's those nuanced calls that really change things and make differences. And it's interesting, if you ever do the activity, and I welcome you to do so, build the same deck, go through the activity of building the same deck a couple of times, writing it down, and see what the differences between what you do are, right? The calls that you make. Don't try to, replicate what you did last time. Try to build the same deck a couple of times and see how the differences come out. It's actually a really interesting activity, right? And like I said, 95% of the deck is going to be the same, but it's those nuanced calls that can make a difference, right? 15 blues, heavier yellows, 18 blues. Should I include this? Should I include this or not? What do I sideboard, right? So that's why I think that, going through the activity like we're going to go through tonight, which is really looking at, what the big boys, the really good players out there are playing right now, can really help us kind of get into the right spot. Now, it may seem to some that we're basically talking about net decking, and while net decking is a generally accepted yet kind of frowned upon practice, I generally really only use it as a reference point, right? Especially in a game like Fab, where practice and reps and knowledge and play style is so important. Net decking really is fine as a starting point, but you need to really customize it to your own preferences and your tendencies and your play style in order to really be successful. And, to that end, a list is just a list, right? The list didn't win, the player did, right? So the lists that we're going to be looking at tonight, right, the selections and differences are, as I said above, exactly to that point. They're fitting those individuals' playstyle, their meta, their tendencies, and what they wanted to do, right? And that's important because tonight, if we're talking about a cool choice, a bold call, or even if we're questioning an include, it's by no means questioning the player or why they did that, right? The results speak for themselves. These guys did very well, right? All of these decks we're looking at are first or second from across the globe. And all we're doing is looking at these and trying to take a learning from it. If we're questioning a choice or an include, or talking about, I should say, a choice or include, it's not questioning their intelligence, or right? It's seeking to understand and put it in context of why they may have done that. Now, all of the decks that we're looking at tonight are pulled directly from LSS's Fab TCG site. All credit is being given to those proper players who also have their, their shiny things accordingly. And as always, the standing invitation to any of these players is to come and join us here and talk about your experience. That invitation is always open, and I'd love nothing more than to have you. So first, I want to start with, that's right, local boy, Archer Taylor, right? Good old Archer. He's been on here several times. He took down the Kraken cards, Road to Nats, on 7/23, 23rd of July with Fi, right? Well, obviously, because that's what we're talking about. We're going through Fi decks. So what I wanted to, again, that the deck is available. We don't need to run through each card, right? But I wanted to point out a couple things that were kind of interesting about this list. Now, what he decided to do, and you need to keep in mind that, one of the better players in our meta, Justin Salmon, he's a very, very strong player, very, very scary. He likes Prism, right? So we always have to worry about that factor, plus Prism strong. So it's no surprise to me that Archer included CNC and a Race Face, a full boat of all of those for the poppers. He also included Rise from the Ashes. As we go through this tonight, I do believe Archer is the only one that included Rise from the Ashes, right? It's a non-attack action. It's actually a really good non-attack action, the red one, +3, and you can pull back a Phoenix Flame. Worst case scenario, it's making a Phoenix Flame swing for 3. I mean, that's kind of worst case scenario in that case. It's really nice. Now, he also played a full boat, or sorry, not a full boat, because not full color boat, but full set of red snatches, which is pretty hot, right? Essentially using Snatch as your, I mean, it's not a Rupture because you could play it alone, but he's kind of using that as his like in game and threatening the draw there. And then he's playing 3 tomes. And then 2 things I wanted to point out that was very interesting I thought about his list was the energy potions, which we've seen on a couple lists. But Cinderskin Devotion, I think he was the only deck that we're going to look at tonight that was playing Cinderskin Devotion. Now it's a 1-drop, swings 2, but it blocks 3. And we do see that a lot, right? You want your blue pitches to generally block for 3 if they can, because then if you get 2 of them, you guys get it, right? So that one blocking for 3, right? That's why we see a lot of Lava Vein Loyalty in the yellow and blue slots with 5s, because that's a 3 block, right? So I think it's kind of in that same vein. I'm pretty sure that's why he ran it, is because it can still do things and it's a block 3. I'm pretty sure that's why he ran it. Another thing I do want to point out as we go through this is you can look at his deck compared to some of the other decks. He went very heavy in Brand to Cinderclaw, and I did want to talk about the difference between Brand with Cinderclaw and Rising Resentment. So Rising Resentment is one that I personally, when I'm building my decks, I'm pretty high on Rising because it threatens the hit of saving you cash, saving you resources on the next one if it hits, right? So it either forces a block or you get the resource value, or I should say the energy point value, whatever, right? You get the resource out of it. You get the extra value out of it. So I really like that one. That said, I think I understand why he's running, right? Because you can look through the list, like he's on snatches and stuff like that. So I think that makes sense why he would be on the Brand with Cinderclaw. And you'll see that particular balance change a lot as we go through these decks. So I think it's very interesting to look at not just the spicy includes, but also how the ratio of Brand and Rising changes as we go through these decks. So anyway, congratulations, Archer. You did a great job. We're always proud of you. I do want to point out he had 2 Salt to Wounds, by the way. Salt to Wound is also something that most people have been using effectively as their Rupture card, right? Their chain. It's not fair to call it a Rupture card, but right, the Rupture served the point as the Chain Ender, and that's your Chain Ender when it hits pretty high. So he was packing 2 of those. We've seen some people pack 3, some people pack 2. So nicely done, Archer. All right, so this one is the deck that took first place at the calling. I also want to look at the second place one. So this is Sander Nift, I hope. Nift. I'm sorry. We're Americans and we're dumb. It's the way it is. So going through his deck, he had a little bit more of a build out than we've seen. So one thing that I did think was interesting about Archers, I'll go throw that back up, was he was not running the Tide Flippers, right? Tide Flippers. So he was running pure Snapdragons, probably for the Snatch play is my guess there, right? If they're going to let Snatch hit, he probably wants to just throw something else out there, which makes complete sense. On the other hand, Tide Flippers has your AB, right? So that was an interesting distinction there as well. Again, I think kind of on your include call. So interesting things I thought about this deck. There's a lot of things. I mean, it's easy to say that because obviously he won, right? It's easy to say that, but there was a lot of things I really liked about this deck. The one thing I do want to call out that surprised me was 2x Burn Away. When I read this card, I thought that card was not going to be very good because you're exiling, right? You're banishing. You're not exiling. Sorry, wrong game. You're banishing your Phoenix Flame. And that seems not very good when you want to be pulling Phoenix Flames, right? So I did think that one was very interesting. Obviously, probably that's a sideboard card. again, invitation out there. If you want to come and educate us, would love to have you on. He is playing CNCs. No erase face in the, or sorry, he has 2 erase face. But between there, a card that I think is very good because Dramai has been surprising me on how good she is. I really think that when I build it out that I want to include at least 2 double strikes for a sideboard card to go do Ashwing pops, right? Because pop, right? 1 card, pop on those Ashwings, that can make a difference. But, again, that may not be what they're concerned about, certainly at the top, but seems like a decent sideboard card, and he did have 3 of those. And then the 2 erase faces, it was interesting enough, he had one red snatch. So the include I do like a lot, which is, I think, probably a mirror call, was he had 2 That All You Gots, right? So that gives him an extra card, right? It lets him block for 3 and gives him an extra card when the chain closes, right? Not right away, but when the chain closes. And then probably the thing that I think is hottest about this deck is the 3 flying kicks. Now, this is not the first time I've seen someone play that in a Fi, but flying kick, it's blue, blocks for 3, and it gets the same bonus. So if it's the 3rd one to hit, I mean, you guys know flying kick, right? Kadachi, flying kick, you guys get it. And in this case, I'm not saying he's Kadachi, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? It's something that we're very used to. It still gets the same bonus, right? So I think that's a pretty hot include, again, because it blocks for 3. I like it. I like it a lot. You can see he's playing both Rising. He's actually heavier in Rising here than he is Cinder Skin. Sorry. And then Brand with Cinder Claws in there as well. So he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 7. Oh, no, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 5, 10. He's 15. He also is 15 blues, right? But then again, we're heavier on the yellow pitch. He's got only 1 Salt and Wound in this case. Probably just ran out of space. But the Burn Away, I think, is very, very interesting. I would like to, again, Burn Away it doesn't seem good to, I mean, don't get me wrong, because it's 2 and then +2 with goes if you ban it, or if you banish. That's good. But, maybe it's like an in-game type thing. I don't know, because, getting rid of, you can probably afford to do 1 of your Phoenix Flames, but I don't think you want to do 2. So, again, that one I think is very, very interesting. I'd be really interested to hear what the, and if you guys know what the take on that. But I believe this is the only deck we saw with Burn Away. All right, moving into Peter Ward, and this is the 2nd place in calling. A bigger equipment suite. Very interesting enough, he was running Arcane Lantern and a single Kadachi. Right, he only brought 1 Kadachi, but the Arcane Lantern to balance. I thought that was pretty hot, right? Whether or not, it'd be interesting to hear from him whether or not that worked, right? Whether or not he was happy with that. You'd have to assume at the point you're taking it to a calling that you've run it once or 100 times, right? But I thought that was really, really cool. But yeah, much, much larger equipment suite to give him a little more oomph, right? Or a little more, I should say, a little more flexibility. Going into kind of the interesting cards on this one, he was on Scalers and Tide Flippers, and looking at stuff, I'm not entirely sure, kind of look, so if you look at his pitch ones, I'm not entirely sure why he was running Snappies all in all. Because remember, Tide Flippers only works with the 2. But if you really go down and look at most of this, I think most of this already has it. With the exception of the ones that you want to play red first and get it. So that I think is an interesting call. But there's clearly a reason he was doing it. Like there's clearly a play there. So that one's pretty interesting. I do want to point out, so Toma Firebrand. So 50% of these guys were running Tome. We'll go to the next one. Don't quote me on that. But so he was running 2 tomes. Include I really, really like in here is Findall's Fighting Spirit. That is a fantastic popper. It's probably the new better pop. It's probably the best new popper. Well, of course it's the best new popper. It might be the best of like the yellow poppers, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. Raging Onslaught. I've been using that forever. Probably going to be using Fighting Spirit. So he was running Energy Potion, which we've seen, but he's also running 3 this round's on me. I pretty sure that's both. That's actually pretty hot, right? It's blue, so it works. It's a Dromai play. It's a Fi play. Maybe even to a certain extent a Briar play. I don't know if you want to let Briar try and draw for more Rooney things, but very, very cool. I thought that was a really, really cool include. We're still, also want to point out I don't have it arrowed there, but he ran a red and yellow Belittles in this case. And still only 2 Minoisms, which is very consistent. We've been seeing people only run 2 Minoisms. Right? It's been very, very consistent. All right, last, so we have Wesley Lingard's Fi deck. This was some unplugged games. Road to Nats, this was 716. These are just the top 4 that I found on the LSS's site. Going into the interest, again, nothing super sexy here, but some stuff that I did like. So no CNCs in here, whether that was a personal choice or a card limitation choice, I don't know. 2 erase faces, was running 3 double strikes. Again, I think that's kind of like a meta call, right? And then so Wesley was the only one running Thaw all weekend, which was something I thought was very interesting that it was missing by and large. We didn't see it in the other ones, because Thaw is the only way to get rid of that damn Frost Tax, right? And you're the one who has access to it. So I thought that was kind of cool. They was running 3 Thaws, because that's kind of where most of the decks I was building had 2 of them in there in the sideboard slot. So I thought it was interesting he was running 3. I mean, again, he might have been very worried about Icelander in his meta, so that's perfectly legit call there, right? And that is something also to put in perspective. The first deck and this deck that we saw versus the 2 in the middle, right? Going to a calling versus going to, a local-ish Road to Nationals, you do have a little more local knowledge, right? So let's make sure we keep that in context for deck 1 and deck 4. One thing about Wesley's deck is his yellow pitches are very much more limited compared to some of the other decks we saw. I mean, the 3 Art of Wars is pretty solid. 2 Salt the Wounds we saw here. But then you go into the pitch 3s, we see Energy Potion, but we also see Time Snap Potion. And I do wonder how often he had to use the Time Snap, because he also, in this case, he's also running Tide Flippers and Snappies. So I'm wondering how often it came up in this, because this deck has a lot of go again. So I'm wondering how often that came up. He's running 3 Brands and he's running 3 Rising, so he's perfectly balanced there. Right, three reds, 3 blues, and one more comment that's pretty much it for this one. And again, congrats not only to Wesley, but to all these guys for doing what they did. I mean, you have to, no matter where you go, right, it's a slog to go through, a lot of good players. One more thing I wanted to point out on this was, the mounting anger seemed to be, and by that I mean the red one, right, which is good. It's a 1/4, it threatens on hit. That one was also a variable card. We had 3 of them in, we'll go backwards. We had 3 of them in Wesley's. We had 2 in Peter's. We had 3 in Saunders. And then, I say it Saunders, right? And then we had 3 in Archers. And I thought that, I just thought that was very interesting how, I just thought this was really cool to go in and look at the different ones. Now, if I'm going to make if I was going to make a conclusion, I really like the sideboard flexibility. There were some pretty hot calls, right? Flying Kick is something that I admittedly, I had seen somebody else do it, and I was like, oh, it's kind of cool, and then I kind of forgot about it. And I really like that. I'm going to do it, right? I really like that. Again, it's that, that's Cinderskin Devotion. We talked about that with Archer's Call, and Sonder was doing that as well. But with the 3 block for your blues, I really like that. I think Flying Kick's a pretty good call there. And I know it's kind of weird because it's a 2, but I think it does what you want it to do. So I kind of like that. And then, again, going through, the only real thing, all these guys clearly had it tuned based on their calls. I am a little surprised at the lack of Thaw overall. And again, this is just me personally. I'm not questioning their ability. Obviously, the results, again, speak for themselves. I was a little surprised at the lack of Thaw because I'm scared S-less of Icelander. The Burn Away thing was odd, right? Because Burn Away itself is kind of self-destructive. So I'm wondering if, because if that's a meta call, like maybe used to slots for Thaw or something like that. But again, maybe they found through their testing that they're just not worried about Icelander. Like that's completely, it seems like Icelander kind of is a good matchup for Fi, but that's a me problem. So anyway, what do you guys think? Are there anything that you found cool or interesting out of this whole comparison, looking at the different lists? Again, I'm not going to post any links to the list because it's on the LSS page, right? Again, I'm not sharing any IP or anything here, right? Credit to all these guys. And again, congratulations. And again, the invite's there if you want to come talk to us about your deck choices and tell me why I'm wrong. Heck yeah. An invitation to come tell me why I'm wrong. My wife would take that any day, man. So anyway, folks, yeah, again, let me know what you're thinking. Are you enjoying Fi? Are you finding any other surprises you're finding? I don't know. I just find it very interesting once the smart minds go to work and what they come up with, and including that L you got. Ooh, I love that. I love that card. So anyway, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. Let me know what you're thinking. If nothing else, go Commando.